The digital transformation of the public service is expected to improve efficiency across government, reducing both the time and inconvenience of doing business in Barbados. In this episode of In the Know, Minister of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology Davidson Ishmael shares how the digitization of records will benefit Barbadians, what's being done to secure their personal information in light of cyber attacks, and how digital technology can contribute to diversifying Barbados' economy. I'm Krystal Hoyte, and this is In the Know. Minister Ishmael, thank you for making time.
It's always a pleasure to have these conversations with you, Krystal.
Let's jump right in. Lots of discussion about digital transformation. So, what is digital transformation?
Well, I'm happy that you asked the question, and I'm very glad to have this conversation with the people of Barbados. Digital transformation really is when you're moving your systems from being very analog or very, I think the average Barbadian would appreciate language such as paper-based, when you're moving from a very paper-based process and systems to one that is more digital and using technology to be able to advance the process and to move things along. So when we're talking about digitizing government or digitizing our public service, we're basically speaking about moving away from the old way of doing things, the more analog, paper-based way of doing things, to better utilizing and employing technology to deliver services more efficiently and more effectively.
Part of that digital transformation is, of course, the digitization of records. What records are being digitized and what does the process entail?
Well, we are embarking on a number of initiatives that will help us to digitize what it is that we do as a public service. Digitization of records is one aspect of that, and persons would know within the public that we would have established back in 2021 a digitization center here at Vaucluse, and the digitization center has the primary responsibility for digitizing the records of government. And anyone who thinks about what a government generates in terms of its paper, you would know that there are files moving from one government department to another, moving from one ministry to another, and over the years of government, several millions of pieces of paper have been generated that capture data from every citizen and every transaction that we have had as a country. We are embarking on an ambitious goal of digitizing all of those records, but it's not going to stop there. Digitization really is, I think, one of the first or primary aspects of digitalization and turning your government into a digital government. So therefore, it moves from moving records from an analog or paper-based record to a digital record, but then you have to be able to use that data. So we're talking then about electronic document records management systems. And that's the next stage after you digitize a record. Being able to store that information, recall that information, analyze that information, and use that analysis to be able to make more effective decisions on behalf of your citizens. So that is the whole gamut of what it is to digitize your government and your public service. We want public servants to be able to take records that they receive and data that they're receiving from their interactions with citizens to be able to move that data from one government entity to another almost seamlessly and instantly, and to be able to use that data to make better decisions instantly. And when they're able to do that, then the citizen is going to benefit from a faster service and an even better service.
And I'd like you to give me examples of that, because the primary question Barbadians will ask is simply, what does this mean? How does the digitization of records benefit the average Barbadian and improve efficiency?
Well, the primary example that comes to mind, I think the one that our government, given the outcry of citizens relative to this particular sore point, a pain point, was with relations to our police certificate of character. Those who were familiar with the process would recall having to, make an appointment to be able to actually go down to the police certificate of character office. You would recall having to get there for sometimes 5:30 in the morning, even 6 o'clock in the morning, because you wanted to make sure that you got there to get your number. Many people who went there after 8 o'clock did not get a number for the day, because if they were only serving 150 people for that day, you didn't get your number drawn. So we remember that process, and then we also remember the pain of having to be in that office for almost a whole day, if not the entire day. After that, you had to wait at least 2 to 3 weeks before you're able to come back and collect your police certificate of character, which again, it speaks to how analog the process was. It was a very archaic way of doing things, but it was a way that we were accustomed doing it. It was a very manual process. You had to go in and get your fingerprints, and you had to go through a whole host of different steps. And that file behind the scenes had to move from one place to the next place, to the third place, to the fourth place, to be able to then give you at the end of it a finished police certificate of character. The government, in embarking on this digitization of government and digitization of our public services, we identified that as a pain point. We said we need to do this better, and how can we employ technology and use the equipment that is at our disposal to be able to reduce the length of time and to make that process a lot simpler. So what do we have today? We have a police certificate of character process that goes from applying for it online. You go through the entire process online. You can do that within minutes. You submit your application, you get an email notification saying that your application has been submitted, and within 24 to 48 hours, you have your signed official police certificate of character in your inbox within 24 to 48 hours. So we've gone from a process that would have taken an entire day out of your productive life, going from your office to sit down in the police certificate of character office for an entire day, and then having to wait 2-3 weeks to actually receive your certificate, to a process now that is done within minutes for the application, and to receive the actual document within 24 to 48 hours. So that is exactly a perfect example of what it is and what it means to digitize, and the value that a digital government brings to its citizens.
As you digitize, will it be streamlined in such a way that it interacts across government offices?
What you're talking about is interoperability, where it really just means systems being able to speak to each other. And as you rightly said, one government office will have a system, another government office will have another system. So if you are, for example, a citizen paying taxes, you pay that to BRA, Barbados Revenue Authority. But you will also want to interact with our NIS, National Insurance Scheme. We need to have a system, and that is what we are building out here at MIST. We're building out systems that will speak to each other, so that one point of verified information is all that we need and all that we ask for from each citizen. So when you provide your data, when you provide your information to one government office, you want that when you interact with another government office, that they already have that data. That is the interconnected system that we're building out, that interoperable system, where each system will be able to speak to one another, and the data will be transferred almost seamlessly from one entity to the next. So another major plank that all of this digital transformation that we've been talking about is going to rest on is going to be our digital ID. The most advanced countries out there relative to digital transformation, all of them have digital IDs. And we've had a lot of conversation in Barbados about the ID and the ID card, etc. That is separate and distinct from what I'm talking about. The Trident ID, physical, what we've rolled out over the last few months, that is separate and distinct from what is now a digital ID. A digital ID allows a person to be able to remotely prove their identity. So this digital transformation that I'm talking about, this journey that we're on, for a citizen to be able to access a service through the BRA, to access a service from NIS, to access a service from the QEH, but they're not physically able to go to that space, or they just don't want to go to that space, they must still be able to validate that they are Davidson Ishmael. So the digital ID that we're going to bring in due course will allow us to be able to have every citizen authenticating who they are, so they can then access those digital services that the government will offer.
Now, of course, if anything digital, the issue of cybersecurity comes into play. What is being done to safeguard Barbadians' personal information in this digital transformation?
Yeah, personal information and the safety of it and data is absolutely paramount in any system. You will find that one of the biggest challenges, there are many challenges when it comes to digitizing a government. There are several challenges. It is not something, and I want to make it clear, it is not something that you can do overnight. This is something that takes, in many cases, many years to move from one cultural way of doing things to a completely different way, and a new way, and a more modern way, and a safer way of doing things. But within that, there are inherent risks. One, there's a tremendous cost to digitize. To be able to move from old systems, to be able to to improve technology, to be able to even include new technologies into your processes, that comes at a cost. So that's one challenge to digitization and digitalization and digital government. The next one, as you rightly said, is that one of trust. And citizens must be able to trust that when their data is given to their government, that it is protected. And this government has taken the cybersecurity mandate and requirement when it comes to our digitization efforts extremely seriously. You would have heard, of course, across the media houses when I would have announced that we would have actually approved at the cabinet level the cybersecurity strategy for Barbados from 2023 to 2026. The period covers 3 years because we understand, of course, that there will need to be a continuous refreshment of that strategy over time. But that strategy has been approved by cabinet, and it really and truly governs and sets out how the government of Barbados is going to treat to cybersecurity as we go forward as a government. In that cybersecurity policy, it speaks about how we will run our what is called a CSIRT, which is a incident response team, and that is really one of the most critical cogs of a cybersecurity mandate within a government. And that is really once again, to make it very simple for Barbadians, that is a unit of people that sit down on a daily basis, and their entire job is to monitor the flow of data and information in and out of our country. They're the ones who will basically be looking ahead of us while we're on the internet browsing, while we're using our digital services in government, while we're accessing our e-services from the government of Barbados. That entity will be sitting down and just monitoring all of that data, all of those exchanges from outside of Barbados, inside of Barbados, to make sure that there are no risk to our people, that there's nothing coming from a hacker's perspective or from a cybersecurity incident perspective. And at the same time, when they see these things, they can proactively prevent them, or if something happens, they can also respond to it very quickly as well. In addition to that, it's not only the people side of cybersecurity, but it's also the resources, the physical resources that are required for that. The government of Barbados has already established a data center that is under the control of my ministry, MIST. And that data center really and truly is almost like the heart of our environment within government, and it allows us to be able to manage, control, store, and protect the data of government. We are in the process right now of expanding our existing data center, and I have a vision to have a tier 3. And for those who are more technical, there are different tiers of data centers out there. It goes from 1 all the way up to tier 4, and each tier represents a higher level of security relative to your data protection. So our data center that we're envisioning is going to be at a tier 3 when we're finished with it, but we're already expanding it, and we have it well secured as well. So you have your infrastructure that protects your people and your citizens and your data. You also have your people, your human resources, and we continuously are embarking on cybersecurity training. One of the adages that we have in Barbados is that the chain is as strong as its weakest link. And when it comes to cybersecurity, I like to tell persons that cybersecurity is not an end state of itself. It is a continuous journey where you're constantly improving your systems, or as we like to say, hardening our systems so that they are less vulnerable as you go along. It is not, you do not arrive at cybersecurity. You don't just throw money at it and say, now you're safe. You have to continuously improve and build upon your systems. So for us, we are on our cybersecurity journey. I am satisfied that where we are right now is at the level that we can be at, but we are working continuously on a daily basis to improve that level by making sure our resources are in place and making sure that our people are in place, and we are helping as much as possible to improve our cybersecurity literacy across the public service so that people don't go and click a link that they shouldn't click. Because as many systems as we have, as much money as we put behind cybersecurity, if our people are not educated as to how to avoid the dangers that are in the cyberspace, we may have a situation where a public servant, well-intentioned, not meaning to do anything wrong, goes and clicks something that they should not click, goes and downloads something that they should not download, and then we have an entire problem because we created a vulnerability on our system. So we're safeguarding behind the scenes a lot of those eventualities, but we're also educating people, not only in the public service, but in the very general public, as to the risks associated with cybersecurity.
To prevent instances like what happened at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital?
Of course, and the QH incident is an interesting one that would have taken place, and we're thankful that we've had the support of the IDB and several consultants from all over the world to help us with that particular incident. But of course, when we looked at it, and they say hindsight is 2020, there were many vulnerabilities within that entire architecture at the QEH, and it's because it's a specialist area. You have some systems in there that have to use old databases, use old operating systems, and as we know, as anybody who has a personal computer will know, you have antivirus that updates on a regular basis so that it can protect you from the latest threats. Now, if you're operating in an environment like a hospital that has to have legacy equipment, old databases and old software, then there may be vulnerabilities inherent in running that type of a platform. So with those vulnerabilities, of course, there came that risk and there came that incident. And we're thankful that our team at MIS and other teams, as I said, many partners were able to come on board to help us to be able to wrestle that particular situation to the ground. And we have gone through a process of recovery to get that institution back up and running. But that's exactly it, Krystal. It's about being able to mitigate all of those risks and realizing that you can't avoid cybersecurity incidents. Cybersecurity incidents will happen at some point in time. The job and the role of government is to protect as much as possible government's data, and we've been making sure that we build a massive hedge around the critical assets of our government so that people can feel safe and secure when they start to interact with our government in a more digital way. Because the more digital services come out there, the more there is a risk of hackers and intrusion, etc. And our job is to make sure that we mitigate those risks, control those risks. We will never be able to prevent every single bad thing that could possibly happen within a country, but we do believe that as long as we are doing our best to mitigate and to control, and once we are aware of what those risks are, then we can make sure we create an environment that makes it much more difficult for any hacker or any bad actor, as we call them, to be able to penetrate our multiple layers of systems and protections.
You mentioned that digital transformation comes with its fair share of challenges. What are some of the challenges the ministry is facing?
Well, the biggest challenges that we are facing, I think, are not unique to Barbados. There are many countries that have already embarked on a digital transformation journey across the globe, but there are only about 8 or so of them that can actually say that they have officially reached that point of having a fully digital government. So what Barbados is doing is ambitious, but it's not beyond us. We can get it done. The good thing about a small island developing state is that you're small. You have a nimbleness about you and an agility that you will not find in larger territories. But there are larger countries out there that have already done this. And what we've found is that the challenges across the board for many other digitalization agendas is the same. One relates to financial resources. There are many countries out there that would love to be able to purchase the latest and the best technologies. Unfortunately, those things come at a very high price. There are persons out there, again, who would like to be able to have the best resources, human resources, to be able to lead their digital transformation agenda. Unfortunately, those persons also come at a very high price. So for a small island developing state with limited financial resources, being able to acquire those resources, human, infrastructural, physical, etc., it becomes problematic. So that's why you find that a lot of governments do this in stages and phases. Estonia is one of the leading digital economies in the world. There's certain countries in this world where even the cattle have ID numbers. Even the cattle have ID cards. That's how digital some countries are in this world. And that's the kind of level that we want to get to. Not necessarily for cattle, but for every person. And those countries, they have tremendous resources at their disposal, but they took, in some cases, 20 years to move from an analog and manual system to a digital system and a digital government. 20 years. What we're trying to do is we're trying to use the knowledge that we have gained from interacting with those countries, building partnerships with those countries, so that we can do what is called leapfrog. So instead of taking 20 years too, we want to be able to get it done in 5 years or 6 years or 7 years. Again, as I said earlier, it is not an overnight thing, but we do believe that with time, with dedication, and with the right resources, we can get there. So the biggest challenge for many countries is one of physical and financial resources. The next thing is culture. There's a big challenge in trying to get persons to do things differently.
Is part of the challenge misinformation? Because I'm sure you've seen the WhatsApp messages, heard the voice notes, and every time the word digital is mentioned, the response is always, I don't want the government to trap me, I don't want my information online. As you embark on digitally transforming Barbados, is misinformation an issue?
Absolutely. Misinformation and mistrust. So that's the big question of trust, which is one of the bigger challenges that many governments have faced. There are some citizens out there that when something new is on the cards, when something new is proposed, their immediate reaction is one of hesitation and reservation. They want to feel it out. So there will be a degree of mistrust that is inherent with any rollout of any new digital or any type of technological advancement. We understand that. Our job is to help our people to walk with us through this process. We're going to hold their hands through this process. We recognize that there are some people who will never gravitate towards a fully digital government, but there are many people who will see the benefits of it. Being able to get through faster with government services, being able to have your information shared from one entity to the next without having to repeat it over and over again, having to print off documents and carry this place and carry that place, being able to have efficiency built into the system, being able to reduce the cost of transactions, government being able to reduce its expenditure because using technology helps us then to reduce costs in many different ways. All of that redounds to the benefit of our citizens. The less money that we're spending on doing things in an analog or manual way, that money can then be repurposed and used to do social services like welfare and NIS and education and building roads and infrastructure across the island. So digital is the future. Digital is the now. And we have to make sure that we're moving forward as a country to embrace it fully. I grew up hearing about the need to diversify our economy. We've had an economy that is largely driven by one source, and that is tourism. We saw what COVID-19 did to tourism across the world. It stops people from traveling, stops people from moving. If there's another global pandemic, God forbid, if there's another global pandemic next year, Barbados still needs to exist. It still needs to survive. It still needs to function. It still needs to be able to earn a living. And it's not going to earn the living through tourism at that time. It has to earn the living through being able to operate digitally and being able to offer services to the rest of the world digitally and online. So this is the future of Barbados, and this is our survival that we're talking about. So whilst there is some level of mistrust, I believe that as people see and hear that how we're progressing, and as we talk them through the process and we build awareness through conversations like this, I believe that many of our citizens will go with us along this way.
I want to interject there. Do you see this contributing to Barbados' economy?
Absolutely, absolutely. In very simple ways. Let's break it down to the average man, average woman. You have people out there who right now are looking for jobs in the traditional sense. So they want to go and apply for a job within government, or they want to go and apply for a job within the private sector. There are other people in our society who are actually making money online. So they're in their home and they're providing administrative services to persons who live in China, who live in UK, who live in America, etc. So the more digital infrastructure that we build out for the government, the private sector will follow suit. And it will create an environment where opportunities for entrepreneurship will take place. So this can easily generate income for our country. Not only generating income for the individual who will then be able to find opportunities within the digital space, but it's going to save us money as well, because the efficiencies and the cost reductions and the cost savings that we're going to gain as a country and as a government, that money then can be repurposed, as I said earlier, and put into a whole host of other things that can then build our economy in greater ways. So there are whole economies called digital economies that can be built out on digital platforms, and that's what we want to do.
And I'm glad that you mentioned entrepreneurship, because many entrepreneurs, especially in the creative space, talk about the barriers which exist in the digital space, from monetizing YouTube or Google and making money in Barbados. What is being done to remove some of those barriers?
We've been having those conversations, and I'm glad you raised the challenge. It's something that we've heard from creatives across the board, persons who want to monetize YouTube, who want to monetize services online. And it is a process that you have to go through with those various entities, Google, YouTube, all these different entities. They have a process for onboarding different countries and territories. Barbados, unfortunately, is not one of those territories right now that allows for those services to be monetized on those platforms. We have already started the conversation with them though, and we've already started the process that they have asked us to start to be able to get us to the point where we can be on their list. And once we're on the list, that then opens up a whole new world for those YouTubers, those bloggers, all the other persons out there who want to be able to use those various platforms to monetize and to make money for themselves. So it is a work in progress. It is, again, this is with a third-party entity. It is not something that the government has full control over. We can't go to YouTube and tell them, please give our people money for these services, but we're working through it with them to be able to get Barbados on their approved list so that we can then move forward and have our citizens benefit from the platforms.
Technology continues to move forward. We're seeing the use of new technology, artificial intelligence, of course, AI is a buzz. Where do you see Barbados in all of this?
Those things are happening right now. And as much as we talk about artificial intelligence, though it's still spoken of in the future sense, it is right around us every time we turn. I like to tell people that when you talk to Alexa, that is artificial intelligence. When you talk to Siri, that is artificial intelligence. When you go online and it can tell you when you're browsing for, you went looking at a pair of shoes, and then the next time you go on Facebook or you go someplace else, you're seeing those shoes popping back up again, or you're looking for a certain type of car and that same car just keeps popping back up in your ads, etc. All of that is artificial intelligence that's working all around us from time to time. So we've been in artificial intelligence zone for quite some time now. It is just that we are now realizing that artificial intelligence can have tremendous, even more tremendous benefits to us as a human species. We also realize that there's some risk, and there's no government on the face of Earth that has been able to wrestle to the ground what artificial intelligence can mean for our country and for our people. No government. Everybody is still right now trying to figure out artificial intelligence. How do we benefit from it? How do we reduce the risk associated with it? Barbados is no different. So we are, at the same time as we do our research and as we have our conversations about artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies, we're making sure that we build the foundation that is necessary to help us to handle those technologies as they come about. I want to also share the fact that we are right now in the process of building what is called our government digital strategy. And we're at the final stages after rounds and rounds of consultation with the public sector, with the private sector, with a whole host of different stakeholder groups. We're at the process now of finalizing that document to be submitted to cabinet, and then we'll be able to share more information about it. But that is a strategy that is going to actually govern emerging technologies, how government in the 21st century operates, how a digital government in the 21st century operates. So that is something that is in train. So there's a lot of information that is coming our way. There's a lot of moving parts to this whole digital transformation journey that we're on as a country. And I'm asking the people of Barbados to go with us.
Minister Ishmael, insightful. Thank you for making the time.
No problem at all. Anytime. Thank you as well.
And thank you for joining us.